So for this last section, the focus is really on the importance of the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and then just a quick note on George Washington's farewell. So the French Revolution, of course, is going to have significant consequences because of the ways in which it will influence culture. So in thinking about culture, which is something that we've been discussing really since the section on religion. Those characteristics are going to include language, symbols, norms, those things that we set as expectations of behavior in society, laws, those that are sustained under a particular authority, beliefs, and material culture. So this section is going to focus on that. If we think about the French Revolution in the 1780s, it actually holds the largest population in all of Europe, about 28 million people. Paris was one of the largest cities in Europe, and it actually held the majority of people in France. About 1 in every 40 people lived there, just to give you a sense. However, most people around France actually lived in villages with less than 700 people. There is some significant language diversity in terms of region. So, for example, in the Northwest region, you'll actually find that Catalans, Basques, Flemish are definitely villages that you will find up here, whereas in those regions that were closer to Germany, there are also going to be significant populations of those German-speaking peoples on the eastern side. About 97% of the total population was Catholic, and of course this definitely says a lot about the way that France was structured at the time. So one of the things that you may have heard of if you've ever read about France is the existence of what were known as the three estates. These were social, economic, and political in structure. The first estate was traditionally composed of the clergy, those that were immersed in religious orders. Parish clergy, however, was not included as part of the three estates. They were traditionally associated with the commoners. The church sustained itself by rents from land. About 6 to 8% of all of France's lands were actually held by the church. Tithes, which were about 8 to 12% of harvests in the empire, and sometimes in certain cases, depending on the region, sometimes seigneurs, those who were overseers of particular tracts of land, were also holding rights to the people who lived on those lands. So because they were part of the church, they were exempt from taxes and basically voluntarily subscribed to royal laws. The second estate was composed of the nobility, ministers, administrators in the provinces. It was divided between those who were part of the military and those who were part of the judicial structure. Basically, status was allotted according to the wealth, and that, of course, was decided in the French courts. The third estate was about 99% of the population, which were what we would traditionally call commoners. About 10% were destitute and surviving on charity or seasonal work. So there was significant inequality in terms of the way that France was structured. In addition to that, Louis XVI held power over all of the estates, including the church. And so there was a very complicated system of taxes and laws that actually were a direct result of historical arrangements. So there are some significant differences in the ways in which people are treated across France, and this, of course, is going to hold significant sway in the foment for the revolution. If we think about what these revolutions are doing, is they're really a break with tradition, and the French Revolution definitely shows this. Traditionally, you'll see monarchies becoming republics, hierarchies calling for more equality, uh, uh, privileges really focused on duty as opposed to just because you were born in a particular class. There's going to be a push from religion to reason, and then from aristocracy to citizenship. And this is definitely what you're going to see as you read the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. This break in tradition is going to have some important consequences for France. So one of the ways in which people showed their affiliation was actually through this cockade. And this was a symbol that was used in all sorts of garments. You'll also notice here that there are different ways in which people dressed. I did want to call your attention to this particular fountain, which was supposed to be the fountain of regeneration. It is literally the figure of a woman basically shooting water out of her breast. Again, all sorts of different ways in which these symbols become part of the revolution and part of an expression of the different ways in which France was moving from a religious monarchy to a logical republic, or at least this is sort of the way that they're envisioning this. There's all sorts of ways in which we see this happen. The invention of a new calendar, for example. But this is going to go south pretty quickly. One of the ways in which we see this is that for those who remained loyal to the monarchy, many of them have to flee. This is part of my own research in French asylum. I actually have the French spelling for it, which is with a Z. This is a place that is located in the middle of Pennsylvania, at the crossroads of two rivers. It was a settlement where a significant number of both French refugees from Paris, as well as Saint-Domingue refugees fled to. They had built all sorts of structures. Ultimately, when they are allowed to come back, to go back to France, most of them leave, and that'll be happening in around 1798. One of the things that we do see take place in asylum is that prior to Marie Antoinette losing her head, the people of French asylum actually had built a provisional palace for her. They really thought that they were going to have her come and stay in Pennsylvania in this particular settlement. So just kind of an interesting way to think about how these revolutions actually contributed to migrations, including to the U.S. colonies. Unfortunately, of course, Marie Antoinette did lose her head. People in the colony did not find out till about 6 months later. Again, it's kind of an interesting way to think about how when we think about these revolutions, it's not just about the places where they're taking place. They're spreading all over the place in really interesting ways. And then lastly, I think in thinking about revolutions, you've got to remember that the issue, especially in France, was about who got to participate. And one of the things that, of course, we see very clearly is how the possessions or the colonies of France will come into play in thinking about the revolution. So for France, the majority of its wealth was actually from its colonial holdings, places like Guadeloupe, Saint-Domingue, Martinique. All of these are going to be extremely profitable for France, but in particular, Saint-Domingue is the most profitable. In addition to that, we know that in Saint-Domingue at the time of the revolution, there was a population of about 31,000 whites, 27,000 free people, or gens de couleur, which were free black men, and enslaved people numbered at approximately 465,000. It produced about half of all the coffee in the world at the time, and 2/5 of all of the production of sugar that was currently being traded in the world. So obviously this was a very important holding for the French. Ultimately, as the French Revolution develops, one of the things that we are going to see is that especially free black men of color are going to begin to demand similar rights. So we have the rise of Toussaint Louverture, who was discussed in your text, who will actually go to France and be part of the discussions about the equal representation of those in Saint-Domingue and gens de couleur. That, of course, is not going to work out because there is a lot of reticence in France about doing so. Those who were important and influential planters in Saint-Domingue were pretty effective at showing those in France that it was not in France's best interest to do so. And so Haiti is going to declare independence. Now, what's really important to keep in mind is that people like Toussaint Louverture, who were gens de couleur, often actually held slaves. So this was not a push for abolishing slavery. It was a push for a representation. What's going to happen once the Haitian Revolution begins as a rebellion is that the abolishment of slavery is going to go front and center. And so if we think about Saint-Domingue or Santo Domingo, what you'll actually see is that the island was divided into two different parts, one which was traditionally held with the Spanish and the other by the French. And in spite of the fact that this small piece was actually held by the French, we see that it was extremely profitable. In addition to that, as the French Revolution is taking place and the Haitian Revolution takes place, the Spanish Empire is going to be important in terms of aiding, especially the Haitian Revolution, to its eventual success, although we know it's a complicated history and some of that was addressed in the book. So one of the things that we do see as important in Saint-Domingue is the fact that to a certain extent it was responsible for the development of the Code Noir, which was about how slavery was going to work. Part of that code was often revised, and it allowed, for example, for free black men to actually be part of the colony. In addition to that, keep in mind that this was a really important part of the French economy, and so it's going to be a significant loss. And then one of the things that I did want to mention is that much of the population was actually in the plantations, and so that, of course, is also going to influence the way that the Haitian Revolution is going to take place. So ultimately, something you may want to think about as you review these documents is, what are the rights of Black people? What do they say about who could belong? Ultimately, do they claim the authority is? And lastly, as you read the documents on the Haitian Revolution, it truly was the only revolution that was a revolution of the enslaved. It is the only revolution that is going to call for the abolishment of slavery, and obviously it is going to have both positive and negative impacts for Haiti, especially in the 19th and 20th centuries. And we'll revisit this before the end of class. Lastly, two things. The French Revolution in particular, because of its Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, is going to have some unintended consequences, even though we know that for France, those consequences were short-lived. We know that in the context of especially the United States, it is going to cause people to question just what those declarations of freedom, for example, in the Declaration of Independence for the United States, are going to mean. So here we have a quote from Frederick Douglass, where he says, "I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation